Who wants to enjoy their relationships more? All of us. We all want to feel more good, more fun, more happiness, more accepted, more empathy, more laughter, more gratitude, more affirmation. These are all expressions of positivity. And all of us, our goal is to add more of those to relationships and experience more of them. We want to be more satisfied. We want each other, both of us, to leave feeling better about ourselves and our lives for having been in each other's presence. And yet, what we can each do to do that might be more challenging for some of us based upon our personalities or based on how we're wired. And so this is a series where we're looking at how to build relationships through the lens of Enneagram. Enneagram shows that we all kind of gravitate to a different type. There's 9 different types, and this is not a series on teaching the Enneagram, so you'll want to go somewhere else to kind of get an overview or to understand your type. But this is helpful for each of us who know our type to look a little bit deeper at asking the question, where might I struggle with contributing to the positivity of a relationship? Where might it be hardest for me? Where might it be challenging for me? Where might I pay attention of where I can either reduce the negativity or increase the positivity? And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about what I've seen as like potentially one of the inquiries around what each of us might do around the Enneagram types to add more positivity. I am by no means an Enneagram teacher, and I'm by no means trying to type all of us who are in any one type that this is like all of our thing. What I am trying to do is help remind us that we're all wired differently, and that when somebody comes and asks me, how can I increase the positivity in a relationship? The answer is almost always varied by who we each are. And only you can really do enough self-awareness to look and say, for me, this is the thing that would make the biggest difference. And so what I'm just going to try to do is go around the 9 types, and it will be a stereotype and it will be oversimplified. We're just going to kind of look at the different 9 types and share one inquiry of like, this might be an area where we could practice increasing the positivity in our relationships. If the one I share with your type doesn't resonate with you, I totally get it. I read a lot of my type and I'm like, I am not that. That does not resonate with me. And that's okay. There's different wings, there's different, Enneagram doesn't capture everything, there's other personality aspects at play, there's other levels of health and awareness and all of that. So there's so many variations here. So I don't want us to get so caught up on anybody feeling like they're being pegged, as much as I want to invite us all to just remember that it will look different on all of us, and that we have the responsibility to inquire and to look into our own self to say, okay, that might not be it, but what does resonate with me? Let's just go around and look at the 9 different types and see if we can kind of see what might be a common inquiry for some of us in the different types. So our type 1s are often called reformers or perfectionists, and their area of positivity challenge might be that their brains are so good at seeing imperfections. Like just naturally walking through the world, they can see what is not right, what is not perfect. It's how their brains are wired. And so an area of perfection might end up coming out in their relationships. It might feel judgmental. It might feel critical. It might feel like you're trying to change us. And so that doesn't leave us feeling good. So one of the things that a reformer, somebody who's a type 1, might pay attention to is, how can I make sure that I communicate my acceptance of people, even in their imperfection? How can I make sure that before they leave my presence, they don't feel like questioning whether I accept them or whether I love them? What can I do that reminds them that I see the good in them? Our 2s are often referred to as the helpers and the givers, and by nature, positivity comes very naturally to them. They are wanting to just fill everybody's love tank and give, love, help. And so it would appear at first glimpse that this would be a no-brainer for them. And yet, if we kind of peel that back, what happens when they overgive and not receive? And this happens a lot. They are tireless, and the rest of us who are friends with 2s are happy to receive from them. And we love that. On their end of it, though, it might end up feeling like they are taken advantage of or not appreciated, or they could start feeling resentful for everything that they're giving, or feeling depleted and tired and exhausted and feeling like they just don't have enough time to take care of everybody. And so for a 2, the act of positivity that they might want to practice is, what do I need to do to receive more positivity? What do I need to do to make sure that others are helping show up for me? And this one's tricky because it probably goes back to the two's need for vulnerability, which is expressing that you have a need. So often the twos want to appear to be the ones that are taking care of everyone else who has needs. But if you don't ever show that you have a need, it's hard for those of us to actually know how to come along and help fill that need. And so being risked as being seen as having a need, as being needy, dare I say, is such an important act, that to be able to ask for what you need and to be able to take care of yourself and to be giving positivity to yourself at the same level you're giving it to other people is an act of positivity in and of itself. And we want your gas tank full. We want you feeling loved. And so making sure that you are taking care of your own positivity tank, paying attention to it and not just worrying about everybody else's. Type 3s are often called performers or achievers. And an area of positivity that I think is often challenging for them is that everything is kind of seen through a lens of trying to achieve and be successful and have an image, and they're very image conscious. And that means that often they're competing, or their brains are often comparing and taking in so much information and filtering it through trying to be who somebody wants them to be. And so one of the acts of positivity is really just trying really hard to see people and as just like, I can just be a part of this conversation, this relationship, this engagement without needing to see whether it will be helpful, whether it will push me to my success, whether it will meet all these goals, whether it will help me my image, whether it will like move me ahead or not. And so sometimes threes can be at risk of kind of feeling above or below people and trying to always kind of figure out their place. And so an act of positivity would just be being the people that, when healthy, can be celebrating others and appreciating others and letting them be valuable and themselves as well, giving that same gift without it needing to accomplish this purpose or this task or to polish their image. So very challenging, but to practice appreciating the relationship for what it is. Our Enneagram type 4s are often called the romantics or the individualist, and they're so good at all of the different feelings, which is such a beautiful thing. And many of them specialize and feel most comfortable in what we would feel, some of us, as the negative feelings, the lamenting and the angst. They live in a fantasy world. They always can see what they wish they had or what they want or what it used to be. And so sometimes just being present and being satisfied is a real challenge. And so it can sometimes come across as like they're depressed or they're moody. And so the practice might be for some 4s to actually kind of practice gratitude internally, but also expressing it and practicing what are some of the rest of us might call more ordinary feelings and ordinary conversations, not needing everything to be really intense and really big, knowing that just not everybody is capable of going there or interested in going there all the time or needs to go there all the time. And so allowing for just more ordinary moments and being satisfied with what is. It can be really challenging for all of us, but for a 4 to just practice finding contentment in the current moment, even if it's not the fantasy or the perfect or the best relationship ever or the biggest feelings that it's evoking. And so, practice in the ordinary. Our Enneagram type 5s are often referred to as the investigators or the observers. And this one's a little tricky. It's not as easy as just saying, they're potentially never going to be the type that's going to be effusive or just super like expressive of their gratitude or just super playful. Potentially, a lot of 5s tend to be more introverted and conserving of their energy and more observing of things. The invitation to a 5 when it comes to positivity, I think, is almost more about naming what you're doing and helping the people who are close to you not take your actions personally. So you're pulling away to kind of conserve energy, and it would be easy for some of the rest of us to misunderstand that as you not being interested, you not caring, which couldn't be further from the truth. And so it's maybe helping name what you're doing and helping participate a little bit more. Can you look up? Can you engage a little? Can you use your investigator nature and ask questions and show curiosity? I think curiosity is one of the most powerful acts of positivity and to be able to show interest in somebody. We all are dying for lack of that. Fives might be able to show up and do that better than any of the other types. So being able to kind of show up and say, you matter to me and I'm going to be present and participate in some conversation is one of the most beautiful things that any of us can receive. Our Enneagram Type 6s are often referred to as the loyalists or the questioner. It's an interesting dichotomy. Sixes often can be kind of skeptical and questioning and concerned at the beginning of relationships, but once they decide to trust you, they can be some of the most loyal, defending people. And so it's such a beautiful thing. And they tend to be some of the most very, very friendly and warm and agreeable temperaments. So when I was trying to think of how to increase the positivity of a six, I kind of was stumped for a second, and I was just thinking, and there is such a diversity in all the numbers. I have to keep saying that because I'm never wanting to just kind of act like we're all the same, but especially with sixes, there can be a huge range of different ways of being in the world for sure. And I was going to say, I think for sixes, maybe the invitation is to ask yourself ahead of time and in moments and in interactions with people what you need in order to feel more positive. That's a little twist, but I feel like you show up, a lot of sixes show up with doing that for others so well. You're so kind, you're so empathetic. A lot of those come very naturally to you. But your brain, it tends to be always thinking of what if scenarios. And you tend to overthink a lot of things, and you tend to worry about how you're going to show up and what's going to happen and whether it feels secure and routine and planned. And one of the things I was just thinking of is maybe inviting yourself to say, what would help me feel better in that situation? What could I do to help bring more peace to me in that situation? What could I do to show up more comfortably? What would help me feel more confident? What would inspire me? And so I was thinking maybe the inquiry for a six is really what can you do to help get out of your head and worry so much, or even playing back afterwards, wondering if you said the right thing and all of that. You're so hard on yourself. My invitation, and I know I can't change that. We can't, and none of us can just kind of say, stop doing that. But my invitation is, what would it look like to be more positive to yourself when you're interacting and before a relationship and in relationship, so that you can show up a little bit more out of your head and a little bit more showing up, feeling what you're putting out. Most of us wouldn't even know that you have all of that stuff going on. And so what could you do to feel more inspired right before you interact? Could you listen to a podcast before you get to the restaurant? Can you practice gratitude or think through what you actually need to say or what you would love to ask somebody that would excite you? So just maybe putting it on yourself a little bit. What would help you feel more good, more safe, and more secure? Our sevens, the adventurers, the enthusiasts, they exude positivity the way that we know so much of it. They are fun and playful and adventurous and always up for yes, which is so fun. And they can be very social and very outgoing and very positive. They love all the positive feelings. So this is an interesting one because as we're going through this series, when we look at the 3 different requirements of relationships, it might be that each of the types struggles with one more than the others. And maybe sevens don't struggle with positivity as much as they might struggle with vulnerability or consistency. So I'm kind of trying to find one thing from each type that might be a place to look into, and recognizing that some of us will struggle more with one than others, and that's fair. But one of the things I thought of for the sevens that might be an invitation for sevens is that they do come with so much activity. There's just a desire to be engaged and active all the time. And recognizing that some positivity takes place with all that activity, but a lot of positivity takes place in quiet moments. And in conversation, I think about expressing gratitude or affirmation or empathy. I mean, those are so powerful. When somebody's sharing something painful, the tendency could be to try to cheer them up. And we think that's positivity, but most people don't want to be cheered up. Most people want to be validated and have empathy. And so an area to explore is to say, where can, in the tenderer moments, in the quieter places, can I make sure that not just that we had fun together, but that this person is leaving my presence feeling like I saw them and accept them and I like them. And so the inquiry here is, how can you communicate your positivity without trying to cheer people up or pull them all in all the time, just meeting them where they're at and accepting that. Our 8s are often called the challenger, the boss, and they come with such a commanding force and can be very blunt and love debate. And those things are good in and of themselves, but it's really important to realize that the majority of us aren't necessarily looking at debate as something that leaves us feeling good, or blunt, straightforward talk doesn't always feel loving and accepting. And so it's not that they're bad, it's as much as realizing that if somebody's going to leave your presence feeling good for having been with you, how can you also assertively, as you do, you assertively can state things, can you do that with a positive? Can you positively assert what you like about them and communicate your acceptance? And that even in debate, being able to acknowledge and to say where you really value somebody and what you appreciated about them and what you admire about them. And so communicating what comes naturally to you is maybe just kind of like getting to the task and getting to the point. And most of us want to be gotten ourselves. So what can you assertively communicate about us to us? An act of positivity would be just inviting you to make sure that how your actions, how you are, maybe it's just recognizing that you are intense. And it's a beautiful thing. You're like changing the world. We love it. And when it's directed at us, it can sometimes feel, we can receive it differently than you intend. And so being mindful of that, positivity would be what can you do to help make sure that we're receiving it in the most loving, beautiful way that you are trying to do things in this world. So practicing your assertiveness and communicating your acceptance of us. Huge. Our nines are called the peacemaker. They love comfortableness and reconciling, which is so beautiful. And they're usually very optimistic and agreeable. And again, this is one of those ones where adding positivity comes very naturally to most nines, which is, so they're constantly paying attention to other people and filling their love tanks. So when I was thinking about the 9 and trying to think of like, so how could they add more positivity? I want to remind us all that adding positivity, when we look at a positivity-negativity ratio, we need 5 positive feelings for every negative feeling is the ratio. And so when we are filling a love tank and giving, that's one way of increasing positivity, is actually increasing the good feelings. But the other way is reducing the negative feelings. And this is where I think a lot of 9s might have an opportunity for growth and inquiry. And that is in order for us to reduce negativity, it's not by ignoring it or swallowing it or just pretending that if we don't acknowledge it that it will go away. Reducing negativity means sometimes calling it out. It means having a courageous conversation. It means stating a preference. It means sharing how it really left you feeling and what your real opinion is. And so to add positivity, to increase positivity, I'm going to suggest that for a 9s, it might be believing that conflict isn't negative, that conflict and confrontation does not mean that it's going to make your relationship more negative. It actually has the potential of reducing your resentment and your passive aggressiveness and your frustration and that kind of seething disappointment that you sometimes feel. And if you can reduce that, then you actually don't have to have as much positivity. But if you have these big things going on that are just huge and never being resolved, then all the positivity in the world isn't going to be able to like make up that ratio. And so realizing that your invitation is to say, how can I confront this negative thing, that we might actually be able to heal it, to reconcile it, to come to peace, to real peace with it, and trust that as I reduce the negative feelings in my relationship, I will be left, and the other person will be left feeling more positive on the back end of it. So as we look at all 9 of these different types, and again, I apologize that we're stereotyping and certainly grabbing just one thing from each of them, and that's doesn't begin to comprehend any one of us and the complexity and the nuance that we each bring. My hope is that by just kind of listening to all of them, that we thought to ourselves like, oh yeah, I could practice that, and oh yeah, that one I resonate with that too. And if none of them land for you, the permission is always there for you to say, okay, just don't worry about that. Don't worry. I don't need to be right on this. But what for me would it look like? Where can I reduce negativity? Where do I struggle adding positivity? What's the feedback I'm getting? How do people experience me? Because all of us want to be happy. All of us want to enjoy each other. And sometimes we just get in our own way of doing that in ways that are meaningful to ourselves and to each other. And so whoever you are, whichever type you are, forgive me for not saying everything accurately and right and whatnot. I love all the types. And what I want is for all of us to just look at how we can bring more joy, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. We all want to enjoy our relationships and feel seen in ways that feel really satisfying.